Awesome.
Nice and hot here at the top of the South Island. So,
Where
yeah,
are you, Aldo?
I'm at the moment in a little town called Collingwood. Last day of my holiday.
Collingwood, nice. What about the rest of you guys? Are you up in Auckland?
So I'm in the top of the North Island in Northland. And by the way, as a side issue, when I was in the Navy, I served on HMS Collingwood, named after the same guy.
That's quite cool, actually.
I've never actually
goes
been
to
to the
show.
town Collingwood. I should.
Yeah.
Oh, cool. And so Northland, Auckland, Horia?
I'm in the middle. I'm just north of Wellington in Paraparaumu.
Ah, you're closer than me then. So I'm sitting, so we've got Wanganui, we've got Kapiti Coast, we've got Collington, and we've got the Northland. This is all from New Zealand. And as you guys can probably tell online, all three guys are from the company Novavi. And I just say it right, Horia?
Perfect.
This time? Yeah,
Perfect,
yeah.
yeah.
We were practicing beforehand, and I kept on saying the wrong one. So Nicole Arthur's already come out and said, looking good, guys. Excited to hear all about Novavi. So yeah, I'm excited as well. So the name, where's the name come from? Let's start with the name.
It's Latin. It means I will renew. I will make refreshment, renewal. It's about focus. It's about where your heart is. You can't have any kind of improvement without deciding to change things. If things are the same, how are they better? In order to get anything better, it needs to change. It needs to be renewed. So if you're interested in getting better, you gotta set your heart on changing and figuring out which changes are for the better. That's what we're about. And that's why it's called focused renewal as well.
That's pretty cool. I love that. And why is it so important? Why is focus renewal so important?
The reason for this is because we all have New Year's resolutions. Come on, it's 2021. We all have New Year's resolutions, and then how long do we stick with them? And this is all about the discipline. We help people with the discipline in order to actually stick to the things that they want to do. Not just people, but also organizations. So that's where the focus bit is really important. It helps and implies that discipline.
And for me, focus is really important and being intentional. And it's a good point, Aldo. You know, so many people, I was at the gym last night and it was heaving because it's the first week in January. And what we want is not we don't want intensity of change. We don't want transformation. In fact, I try and avoid using that word. If anything, we want to have that compound effect of improvement. So the micro habits of 1% compounding time after time.
And that requires sustained focus. That's the key.
Yeah. And I'm with you guys on that. I use the word transformational all the time. I can't help myself because that's the buzzword everyone wants to hear. But I always talk about the whole Kaizen versus Kaikaku, you know, like continuous improvement versus big leaping jumps. I also touch on the fact that, you know, Kaikaku could be very good for complicated environments where you may know the end solution, whereas we're in complex environments. We don't know the end solution, right? Is that why you focus on Kaizen?
Well, see, this is where it comes down to simplicity. It's much easier to say, for instance, for myself, I describe my way of work as the art of Kaizen. But just because I say the art of Kaizen, if I were to say it's the art of Kaizen and Kaikaku and tame flow and theory of constraints and Kanban and that it's too much, right? So therefore you say the art of Kaizen, and that kind of draws with it all these other things, because Kaizen and Kaikaku, they're not kind of different things. They're two sides of the same coin. They're complementary elements.
Totally.
And for me, the reason I'm a Kaizen coach is because I generally adopt the stance of a tactician. So I'm looking at helping teams and people help themselves have that mindset of continual improvement or continuous improvement.
Mm-hmm.
And so Horia and I have slightly different focuses on the whole essence of what Kaizen is.
Awesome. So let's go deeper. I'll give you, so from my point of view first, right? So for me, Kaizen, towards Zen, towards perfection. You never quite get there, but you're always heading in the right direction.
Yeah.
Or you're trying to head in the right direction anyway. How does it differ between Kaizen at a team level and Kaizen at an organization level?
That's a brilliant question, because it all comes down to what matters most. What's the purpose of a team? Is ultimately, if you say, okay, we have teams because by banding together, we can deliver more value, we can get more synergy out of our mutual contributions and get better value flow than we could individually. So by pulling together, by covering and moving together, we can actually get stronger, get better together. So is there a significant difference between working together just as a small team, or, oh, now that we're a bigger organization, is that going to make so much more of an impact? And this is where the jury is out to a large extent, because the more bureaucratic the organization gets, the less impact it ends up having for the actual people that the organization is supposed to serve. The more personal, the more connected the team is with the actual people that they serve, the more natural the value flow is. So the larger the organization is, it will only continue to be effective if everyone is perfectly, beautifully aligned and harmonized in that value focus, in being of great value, in caring about delivering a great experience. Otherwise, as soon as I care more about, oh, but my team does this and your team does that, we're focusing on us and our interactions as teams, as opposed to, well, but hold on, what about the customer? What happens to value to the customer? Yeah.
What actually matters. Yeah.
Exactly. So to me, and that's why I call it the art of Kaizen, because humans are not replaceable sprockets. So I can't make it into a science. A science is more about the laws of, the repeatability of, and the thing is, humans are not amenable well to science themselves, right? Because we're so beautifully diverse creatures.
But Horia, I thought Agile, you could just take something, a package, and install it over here.
Actually,
Okay.
I've got to chip in here. So I'm aware, Horia, you've had a Kaizen artist for years now.
That's right.
Now I'm aware of Kaizen Coach. It was pioneered by Motorola in Six Sigma, Lean Six Sigma, 20, 30 years ago.
Yeah.
But it was 3 years ago, almost 3 years ago, I was leading an Agile practice up here in Auckland at Freedom. And I saw that people were starting to commoditize Agile and misuse it and misrepresent it. And at that point, I was leading a practice of Scrum Masters, and they were saying, well, there's a perception that Scrum Masters are relatively junior to the more senior Agile coaches. Now, I know that's not true, but it was problematic in terms of us hiring people. So we decided to change our names, and we worked around, and then lots of different companies are doing this now, Delivery Coach. But we settled on Kaizen Coach. And for me, that I was really pleased when that idea suddenly sprang out, because it is about organizational improvement, it's about team improvement, but really I'm into how individuals have that mindset of every single day, every time you wake up and don't hit that snooze button and you do something amazing that day, you're that little bit better than the day before. And once you've got that mindset at a personal level, then you can elaborate it through to the teams you work with.
I like that, Gareth, because from my point of view, I always stood by a saying I've said for many years. I probably stole it from somebody else. What did you do today that got you closer to your goals? That's a successful day to me. Coach. What does coach mean to you, Gareth?
So, depends. Now, today I was wearing this T-shirt because I was working with a few delivery coaches, and it said, if at first you don't succeed, go back and try again and do what your coach told you to do the first time. Now, and it's a triathlon T-shirt. Now, in triathlon, a coach will give you a program and will say, I want you to do this in order to achieve this goal that we've agreed. And then when you have a race, they'll ask you, and this is a mentoring role, to say, how could you improve, and then get that insight back out of you. I think there's different definitions of coach and mentor. For me, it has become genericized a little bit, but For me, a coach is a blend of teaching, training, mentoring, guiding, and all of these things. And I know Lisa Adkins and the IC Agile have a definition of it. But for me,
yeah, but that's agile coach, right? So
yeah,
if we pull back, and this is why I get a little bit grumpy when we say an agile coach must be Lisa Atkins, or an agile coach must be for Scrum, or an agile coach must, but coach. When we think about a coach, and I agree with you, Gareth, because I'm becoming a little bit of an academic myself now. And when I read a book by Levi, it does meta-analysis on a whole bunch of team dynamics. And in there, it said a coach can be consultational, it can be educational, or it can be facilitational, right? In other words, you can be teaching and instructing, you can be facilitating, you can be asking the hard questions. And I'm going to quickly run to Aldo here, because 4 years ago, Aldo, wow. 4 years ago, I remember sitting in police and you said to me, why do you not call yourself a coach? And I said, I don't think I had the right to call myself a coach until I am coaching. And we walked through that and you helped me understand and reflect and go, okay, crikey, I am a coach. Okay, I get it now, I get it. So Aldo, back to you then, right? So with coaching, what is your definition of coaching and when do you become a coach?
I follow a model that I've learned when I did my formal neuroleadership coaching training through the Neuroleadership Institute that was developed by David Rock. He's developed a model called the TAPS model. And if you overlay two, I can't really draw it here at the moment, but if you overlay two axes, an XY plane, and you have at the top a T and at the bottom an A on your Y axis, and on the x-axis you have a
P and an S.
P and a P on the left and an S on the right. It says and you create quadrants of tell, ask, or sorry, I'm confusing myself here.
We need a whiteboard, Aldo. We need a whiteboard.
Yeah, we need a whiteboard. But every conversation that I have, I put in across those axes, and the axis is for tell at the top and ask at the tell at the bottom, ask at the top, and problem and solution. And if something is in the ask solution quadrant, that's a coaching conversation. If a conversation is outside in any of the other quadrants, it's not a coaching conversation. So I'm taking a really hard line view on that. That's also why I'm not sure whether I should still call myself an agile coach, because there's a lot of people, maybe this is dangerous ground, but there's a lot of agile coaches out there that doesn't know how to coach. It is a little bit of a bugbear of mine, but we'll move on swiftly.
Well, it's a good point.
Could I just add to that 2x2 quadrant you talked about, Aldo? And I'm thinking of David Marquet's Ask, Know All, Tell All. It's the same 2x2.
Yeah.
And it's David Marquet from Turn the Ship Around is very much informed by the work of David Rock and Neuro Leadership Institute. And he has the Know All, Tell All, which was when he was a submarine commander and he knew the submarine. Then he had the Know Not, Tell All, which is when he was on the Santa Fe and he was trying to issue orders and he didn't know the submarine. And where he wants to get to is that you don't tell, and you go to the don't tell. And even if you don't know or you know, ideally you would know. And it's about
one moment, guess. I'll try and find. Can give me 2 seconds.
Yeah,
I'll bring that in.
Okay, I actually found the whiteboard. So this is the TAPS model.
Oh,
TAPS.
Okay, hang on. Sorry, guys, because you've started drawing. Because you started drawing on the Zoom call. It's all right. I'm going to find a way of doing this.
Did I break your setup?
Pretty
you
much.
did break my setup.
Oh, so sorry.
But give me a second. What I'll do is I will.
This is not the first time I've broken something of Michael.
It's because you got a tester's background, right?
Exactly. He's looking for a way of breaking my system.
I'm sorry. I'll stop sharing then.
No, there we go. Keep going.
Okay. So this is the TAPS model from David Rock. And in this, any conversation that happens here is a coaching conversation. The conversation is the coach asking questions to drive the coachee towards a solution. Anything in this domain here is psychology, psychiatry. The professional is asking questions about problems. And if there is a problem, the problem tell space, this is consulting, and tell solution. It is mentoring and or teaching. So it goes a little bit into teaching, and mentoring both goes into a little bit into the problem tell space as well, but it's mostly into the tell solution space. And so I use this model to define in my own mind, what type of conversation am I actually having now? Are we talking about problems, or are we talking about solutions? And that means that I got to either change my hat to tell or change my hat to ask. It depends on what that coachee wants. I'm going to stop the share now.
It's something like adaptive leadership there, where you have a suite of skills and strategies, and depending on the context, you want to be able to kinetically move around. It's called kinetic leadership. And it's the same in coaching. So, and as we facilitate, sometimes I'm facilitating and I'll say, I'm going to change my hat now. I'm just going to share with you what I think, and then I'll go back to being a neutral facilitator.
Yeah, but the thing is, Aldo, your observation about coaches actually not really knowing how to coach, it also comes down to the ecosystem in which they operate. Because many times I've come across clients that expect consulting, and they ask for a coach, but they want a consultant. Because they expect, the coach is here, the coach will tell us what to do. The coach will tell us what the problems are. The coach will figure out the solutions, right? And it's not a coach. You're not asking for a coach, you're asking for a consultant.
Yeah. And sometimes what happens is you ask the coach for a very direct answer and a specific problem, knowing their expertise. And this is the dilemma with agile coaches, because they also bring to bear their subject matter knowledge. Yeah. And they're conflicted. It's a dilemma. So sometimes they resolve that by saying, well, what do you think? And they try and answer the question by asking the question. It can be frustrating.
But you've also had Michael do a dig at taking a model and then implementing that from one place to another, and that's another part of the whole dynamic that exists in coaching, agile coaching specifically, is that many people are familiar with just a single framework, and that's the only hammer they want to go around and help other organizations with. So if the only tool you have is a hammer, everything else looks like a nail, and that's a big problem. So when I interview for agile coaches or even scrum masters, I'm really curious about what was the latest reading they did. What did they do to improve their knowledge? What did they do to build additional understanding of new frameworks, new methods, new practices, new techniques out there that they can bring to bear? And very few actually do that extra bit on a weekly basis, and find ways to make it work in their context.
And I think our weakness between the three of us is we do too much of that, and we can sometimes overwhelm people.
Yeah, we are scary sometimes because we're so much outliers, right? What we mean by that is between the three of us, we consume 200 to 300 books a year, right? So that is highly unusual, right? Most people will do maybe a handful of books a year, if at all, right? And we're way past that.
But the flip side to that, and I found this, is sometimes I've got all excited because I've just read this new book, and I'm with a client and I'm saying there's this great thing I've learned, and this is a new way of articulating it, and I try and show the humility that it's not my idea. So then I reference the book, and then one of our clients said the other day is they went on a leadership course I was delivering, And the people at the client said, "You got to come back with a huge book list, mate." And I think one of our audience here was on it as well, and she wrote a bit of a blog on it and drew a little bookshelf with all the books I mentioned. I think it was about 25. So we've got to be careful because it has to be moderated with what's reasonable to consume.
Yeah, the context there really matters. Not all solutions fits all situations. So you got to be able to understand the context and then blend whatever toolkit you have. And that's why I like the Discipline Agile, is because it gives you a spread of the toolkit, and it's up to you to have the real skill in order to blend it for that specific situation. And that moves you away from, I only have one hammer and everything else must look like a nail. So it's highly contextual.
And I'll jump in there, Aldo, as well. And thank you for the DA book, by the way. It took me a good few weeks to actually read. So for those who don't have it, it's a very thick book on DA book. But whereas I thought it would be just a couple of concepts to sell, that's the one. Whereas I thought it would just be a couple of concepts in order to sell something, I was actually quite happy, because what it becomes is this sort of like, oh, I'm in this scenario. 1 second. Here's 5 answers I could possibly use.
Yes, exactly.
And that was quite cool. I mean, I'm not going to memorize them all because it's
no,
not
you don't need to. Not even the authors have memorized it all. So it is all about understanding which of those specific options would suit your context the best. Yeah. And that is really powerful.
Yeah,
I think.
And I liked it. So yeah, so you guys are involved with DA. You guys, your names are on that book I saw. So how did that come about? Was it a positive experience for you? Has it been good? Is it something you promote as opposed to other things? And I will say it, as opposed to SAFe or Less or Spotify, even though they're frameworks, and this is not a framework. This is a set of tools that can be used with SAFe. I get it, before you shout at me. But how are you finding the experience?
Personally, I don't walk in with the waving the book around. I first try and understand what the actual customer problem is, and what type of solution they want. And then over time, using Kaizen, we then find ways to systematically make those informed decisions of specific techniques and practices and methods. And we slowly build that up over time. Toyota's success hasn't happened overnight. It took them 50 years to be where they are today. So the same type of thinking, that's why Kaizen is such a strong theme in what we do, is that you only get compound interest from that 1% thing every day. So do one little improvement every day for a year, and then you're not 360, it is quite a lot of improvement. You start getting the compound interest, even off.
Yes, it's 3x.
Yeah.
Yeah, in the finance world, we talk about the same thing. People talk about, 7% a year return, blah, blah. I've always aimed for 1% a day, because that's what I do in my own life. Cha-ching. But also because 1% a day equals 3 times compound interest, which is a big number.
And that's what we try and really help customers to understand is that is actually the engine room of change. This big linear change programs that happens, that you forecast change 3 years ahead. You cannot predict what's going to happen. There may be another COVID, there may be another US president, there may be another explosion of what happened in, what was that warehouse that exploded? Anything can happen.
Yep.
So you need to be able to pivot quite quickly. So your whole linear program that you worked out 3 years in advance, if something happens, the lead person resigns, then what? You got to be able to actually pivot. And the only way to pivot it is just by actually having small continuous improvements.
Well,
I'm really focused on that.
Discipline sets you free. And essentially what we're doing is we have three main areas of focus. On the one hand, we're working with teams to get them the basic chartering experience, to have a really solid foundation to do really well. And then we're helping them kind of build on that and get accustomed to a spiral of a virtuous cycle where, we try a little bit and we gain confidence and we gain competence, and that builds our confidence and become even more competent. So that way you get better and better, and you start to see, this thing actually works, and you derive a lot of joy out of it, and hey, your customers appreciate it, and everything gets better and better. So that's one essential thing. Another one is what we call adaptive oversight, meaning every initiative out there has some form of oversight. And the thing is, language is really weird, because oversight has two meanings to it. On the one hand, oversight is you see from above, right? You oversee. And that's fine, right? The bosses are overseeing the initiative. But oversight also means, we made a mistake. We forgot something. There was an oversight. Yeah. So the value of oversight is in noticing, are we missing anything? Is there something that is in our blind spot that as an initiative, we got so focused on what we were doing that, damn, we missed this thing. And that's why there is no even conceptual possibility that we should just have teams led to their own devices with no oversight whatsoever. Because if we do that, we run into higher and higher risks of missing things and having blind spots. And without decent oversight, we may end up with significant unpleasant side effects. So how do we reinvent the way of governance inspired by lean and agile ways of thinking and many other sort of ways of thinking, organizing, and acting in such a way that we're far more harmonious, far more organic, and far more responsive in how oversight interacts with initiatives? That's another thing that we're focused on. And underpinning both of these, we're really interested in what we call focused leadership, and the leadership essentials class that that Gareth ran last year is kind of the foundation to that. So all of these three things together kind of bring it to life. That's kind of a tip of the hat to the three overlapping circles in the middle of our logo, right, in Novavi.
Yeah.
Now, the interesting thing, just to sorry, Aldo, to elaborate on what Horia was saying about governance, we see that there's a perception of a false dichotomy that you're waterfall and you use governance, and we're agile and we don't govern. And we know that that polarity doesn't exist. We want to get the best of both worlds. Within a traditional way of managing initiatives and projects, there are some values that we can bring over to an agile lean way of working. And that way, we've been looking at polarity mapping as a technique to do that.
Yeah.
Aldo, you were about to say something, mate.
So Michael asked a question earlier that started off the conversation, and I wanted to just say this is us answering your question, Michael, about what does coaching mean for the team and what does it mean at the organization level. At the team level, you need the blend of those three things that Horia mentioned. But you need that a blend at scale for an organization for exactly the same three things. And that Horia mentioned the virtuous cycle. There is a virtuous cycle in leadership that they talk about, is as you start with leadership, then the leadership develops the right mechanisms in which you can, and the environment in which you can bring about any change, a significant or meaningful change or valuable change, and then that influences then the actual implementation of those changes, and that again influences the leadership. So that's another virtuous cycle that that goes there. So all of these things are relevant at both those levels. It's just the nature of some of the conversations are different. You may tend to be a little bit, hopefully be a little bit more direct with the leadership of the organization, but there's some precious people as well. But
that's been up in my face a few times.
Right.
Yeah, I was looking at you, Gareth. But anyway, so.
But let me push back a little bit, right? Because I absolutely agree with your definition of coaching, and I think you have some very good similarities there. And also, I would say, personally, Horia, and we could probably talk about that for half an hour, I think your artistry is coaching under my definition of coaching as well. So
that's right.
I see no reason why a difference
That's
there.
right. Yeah.
Where I'm going to push back a little bit, based on your definition of coaching, and the understanding that we need an adaptive strategy to get there, we need adaptive oversight to get there. I totally agree with that. But is there a risk that will push away from having a strategy where we say, we can't have a strategy, things could change, COVID-22, right? Whereas, because I'm seeing a trend with coaches especially, or people who call themselves coaches, I'm just sprinkling the seeds of success. I'm not doing anything. I'm just basically here to facilitate. I'm just here to coach. All these kind of excuse-making terms. There's no measurement of success. There's no strategy for implementation. There's no transformational guidelines. There's no end result because we don't know where we're going. Is that a risk if we focus too much on there is no end result because we don't know what it could be?
No, there's a saying. I'm translating this now from what I understand, and because English isn't my first language, apologies. It's about you keep the vision, but you change the plan. You don't stick to the plan. That's the essence of it. Okay.
Well, that, by definition, that is what a pivot is. And Eric Greasley gets really frustrated at this. The definition of a pivot is a change in strategy whilst maintaining the same vision.
100%.
Yeah. So this is mission command. This is Auftragstaktik. Basically, it's not a new idea. It's all kind of from the days of Sun Tzu many thousand years ago.
True.
Essentially, you gotta have an aspiration. You gotta have a why, a purpose. And you're not changing a purpose on a dime. You're not going to say, "Oh, I want to save humanity." No, I want to oppress humanity. It's like pick one, right, and then stick with it. It's what do you do in that pursuit? Well, as any effective human, well, you're going to use what's available to you, and the more harmonious you are with your purpose, the more you're going to attract other like-minded people that see things in a similar fashion, and the more it'll start to become a whole movement. The thing is, society, civilization doesn't change unless it has to. And this is unfortunately, or fortunately, depends how you want to look at it, rooted in biology. Our bodies are put together in such a way that our bodies are constantly screaming, "Don't make me think. Do not make me think," because thinking is so cognitively exhausting. Yeah, research suggests that we have a set bucket of cognitive capacity. And if we're misusing our way of action, we're running out of that capacity. And then later in the day, we're making poorer and poorer decisions because we're shorter and shorter with our sort of capacity to reason. Our prefrontal cortex.
I'll give you a little fact, guys, that you might like for you next time. A study on grandmaster chess players, they were burning 6,000 calories in 10 hours.
Exactly. Exactly.
Now, Gareth, when you do your Ironman calculations, right? It's like 10,000 for an Ironman, right?
Yeah, I've read a book on that. Somebody challenges that number. I've heard it.
Don't spoil my bubble.
Sorry, but I won't rain on your parade, mate. 6,000 calories. So the brain is about 20% of the glucose of the body.
Yeah.
And the prefrontal cortex is primarily where that goes. And it's only like 2% of the body weight. When I do an Ironman, it's about 6,000 calories. Now, if you know anything about how metabolism works, I sweat a lot. I get through about 6 liters of water in that time. It should be more. When you watch a chess player, they're not wearing spandex, right? They don't sweat. So that says to me that, and they're not breathing heavily, right? So they're not respiring. So cognitively, it's probably 6 times what the brain would normally create. But a few books I've read on that dispute it, but I have heard that rule of thumb. And it is funny. It is funny. But it is true. And, I'm really big on this at the moment because the part of the brain, the anterior cingulate cortex, is the bit which inhibits emotive behavior and impulsive behavior. And that has a timer switch. It has a limit on the amount of energy it's got. Yep. This is why our friends in supermarkets know that you buy the fruit and veg first, make the tough decisions. And then when you get to the checkout and you've run out of decision energy, you start buying the candy bars. And it's
or you have children nagging you to do that. But anyway.
And
this is
I agree
why,
with that, Gareth. I follow Barack Obama's advice he gave me a couple of years ago. I have a blue and a black suit, so I don't have to make any more decisions than I have to.
Yeah.
I actually only have blue suits. I have blue suits, I have blue shirts and white shirts, and my only decision I have to do is which pair of shoes am I going to wear? The scuffy ones or the real scuffy ones?
I think Zuckerberg famously only wears a grey shirt, so he doesn't have to think about it.
Yeah, I think it's a great.
Yeah.
Yeah. Where were we going with that? Hang on, sorry.
Well, but where we're going with this is essentially be mindful of cognitive capacity, be mindful of not overdoing it. So for instance, personal Kanban. How many people develop the habit, the discipline of using a personal Kanban?
Very few.
Because personally, I found personal Kanban to be so liberating because I don't have to remember stuff. If it needs to be done in the house, it's in the personal Kanban. If not, it doesn't get done. And my wife has access to my Kanban. If she wants me to do something, she adds it to the Kanban and it gets done. If she doesn't add it, it's not getting done. Easy, simple. I don't have to remember. It's there, right?
Can you please ask your wife to tell my wife that it works? Because
it does. I'm happy
I asked for a list. Please provide me a list. It's easy, Michael. Why don't you understand? Do this, and this. And if this is too hard, do this. If this, do this, do this.
No. Stop.
What's the first thing?
Stop telling me. Stop telling me, because I can't.
Here's an interesting thing. So, because I run a farm up here in Northland, and my wife and I knocked together a Trello board, and the backlog looked like we were building the space shuttle or something. And there's something called the Zeigarnik effect. And if you have an overwhelming backlog of work, your brain is recycling and remembering, oh, I've got to do this, I've got to do that. And that creates procrastination. And this is why limiting our working process is really important. And checking things off and ticking things as done. Because as things are undone, they remain in our short-term memory. And that, again, consumes energy.
I agree. And I actually will add to that. So we do agile construction. And the only thing we really do more than anything else is we limit not only the things in progress, we limit the things in field of view.
That's right. Yeah.
We know that we need to do this whole. I'm in this house now, right? So this house, the whole thing's being renovated. It's 490 square meters. It's a heritage home. I want to redo it. I'm looking forward to it. If I had to think of even the number of rooms to do, I wouldn't get anything done. So we've gone, right, the only thing in field of view right now, the feature, is the living room. And in the living room, I actually only monitor 3 or 4 things I'm actually focusing on. And we get things done under budget, on time, and I'm stress-free. The moment my wife starts saying to me, oh, what about the heat cylinder? It's gone. It's gone. Nothing gets done.
That's right.
And
yep.
So David,
same with work.
David Rock's book, Your Mind at Work, talks about thinking of actors on the stage, and you never have the whole cast on the stage because it wouldn't be an entertaining experience. You'd only have 1 or 2 actors on the stage. And that's the same thing, right? We want to minimize the clutter in our minds to give
Actually, I really like that, Gareth, because when I did a lot of videography lessons on YouTube, trying to figure out how to do all this stuff. And one of the things around focal lengths was about decluttering the image for the customer so that they can focus on what needs to be focused on the most. And they said themselves, if you have a short crop, then it basically means that they can pick up on the intricate muscles movements. Whereas you can still see them, but you're not watching them because you're watching 4 people right now and you don't know, am I blinking or not? Because your brain has to remove information.
That's right.
And this is why in-person meetings are still more valuable than even the highest definition Zoom meeting. So as we emerge out of COVID, we want to start considering how might we get back to be co-located. Because
yes, Otago University did a really good study, and I really appreciate that they did it. And they did Skype versus Zoom versus face-to-face versus email, all that kind of stuff, right? The highest quality cameras at 50mm focal length with the right lighting, everything else is still 5% below. They had a metric for human behavior, like how much you trust somebody. It's still 5% below what actual face-to-face communication is. And their thing was simply as smell and sound. Because we pick up on things like, let's say Aldo moves slightly, and it's like, it doesn't make sense to us on a screen, but if he was sitting there, it's like, oh, he's uncomfortable. Oh, my hairs have moved. So I agree with you. We need to be I think we should leverage decentralization. We should leverage moving to more use of Zoom and more use of collaboration tools, but never forget that we still need to see each other face to face.
And I think Silicon Valley has made a huge mistake saying that's it, you can work from home forever. And any company I consult, I say work from home, make use of deep work, deep thoughts, but still have the essence of seeing people, having that community. Because if you lose that over 3 months of a lockdown, or it's been 9 months now around the world, you may not see the diminished performance. Over 2 years, you definitely will.
That's a really useful aspect, but I will bring for you another element, and that is energy and energy flow. In other words, if I have a 60-minute session with no breaks at all, that really takes your energy for a high dip. We tend, therefore, to work in Novavi more in 90-minute segments, but we take a break about 40 minutes in. And that 5-minute break, 40 minutes in, all of a sudden kind of reinvigorates people, right? Because we deliberately say, guys, we're going to stop for 5 minutes, stand up, stretch, refresh your drinks, come back in 5. And that you can immediately see, and they notice it, right? Because they come back after the break and all of a sudden, oh, wow. And now we're having insights and we're all of a sudden the energy changes, and that needs to be activated in this kind of format.
How many times have we seen 4-hour-long meetings, and you get the primacy of the first 20 or 30 minutes, and then the rest is waste? I see that far too often.
Yeah, well, a lot of meetings are all waste, let's be fair.
Now, I wanted to add one other thing around energy, and that is breathing, learning how to breathe really well. That has such a powerful impact.
Yeah. You can see why us coaches start to be put in with the whole life coaching thing, right? But for those who are watching this, remember, we try and relate this to your work environment, right? Big project, too much to do, becomes waste because you get too distracted, your cortisol levels rise, you become agitated, you don't get better collaboration with your team members that way, breaking them down, only making one feature visible at any one time, focusing on a work in progress limit. And then I'm assuming, guys, continuously improving?
Yeah, relentlessly improving.
Relentlessly improving. So I overheard adaptive oversight. It's a cool thing. We touched on it slightly. Do you want to go into more detail? What is adaptive oversight? Why is it important? What problems is it solving?
So a few years ago, I started talking to Horia about there's a big gap. There's a group of people that agile coaches seem to miss. And they always end up butting heads with this group of people. And these are the people called program managers or governance people. And we started doing research during lockdown in 2021, started talking to a lot of people. And the term governance actually has got a legal connotation to it. So we said, well, it's not about the legal aspects of it. It's about the practical aspects of making sure that you do have the overseeing capability of making sure that the people whose money you're spending still want to know you're spending that money well, whether it be the citizens of a country or whether it be the shareholders of an organization, they're still concerned about how you spend their money. So governance is more of a legal term. So we came up with the word oversight. And then with the research, it came out that it has got that two meanings. And that's quite a powerful word. The other part is we've borrowed from the agile world, and that's where the adaptive comes in. It means that you cannot have a draconian regime of this oversight that has a one-size-fits-all mentality, but you need to be able to use and follow those Kaizen principles in order to pivot as your situations change. There's a lot of organizations out there running both waterfall and agile projects, and there's conflict. How do you do oversight of how the money is spent or whatever on waterfall versus the agile projects, and there's a lot of conflict there. So we want to help those organizations through this research and everybody out there, in order to understand that it is and it can be an adaptive set of practices and process that, no, not process, that's the wrong word. It's an adaptive set of practices that you can actually follow, and lots of considerations. Now, Horia is actually better at articulating this, but from my practical perspective, it is about solving that, that polarity between the people that has to make sure the money gets spent well and the people that want to try new things.
Now, the important thing here in governance or adaptive oversight is you cannot have an adaptive oversight or governance if you haven't chartered in the first place. And far too often I see projects being kicked off and straight into coding or straight into doing the work. Worse, I see project managers focusing on time and scope, if we're lucky, and maybe cost. But if you think of the PMI 9 areas of knowledge, there's 9 of them. So there's things like projects HR management and projects integration management. So while time, scope, and quality and cost are important, there's many other things we need to consider. And governance is really measuring against what we thought would happen. So if we haven't stated or articulated what we think will happen, how do we know if we're varying from that? And I see in new projects, because of the urgency and the uncertainty and volatility, people are tending to push forward and go into execution phase without that inception phase. So the thing that we've been really focusing on in the last few months is helping clients charter. And one client I'm working with at the moment, we're going through every team, every tribe, every squad. And even at the tribes, they're using Spotify language, but even at the tribe lead level, I'm going to charter them both as a team and the project that they're working on.
100%. I agree.
Now, there's a really interesting sort of side effect of this oversight. And that has to do with how do you change the conversation from I'm making small improvements, therefore I believe that I can only make small improvements, to, whoa, a radical improvement is actually possible. But I'm not accustomed to that, so therefore I don't even believe that it's possible. What if I could tell you, guys, do you realize that by the end of the week, we could improve our lead time by 10 times? They would go, that's impossible, man. Surely it can't be done. I mean, we've been doing work this way for years now, and our lead time is between 2.5 to 4 days. And you're telling us that in 2 days, you're going to work with us, and by the end of the week, we're going to go back to work, and somehow we're going to reduce that to what? To minutes, to less than half an hour? That's impossible, man. And yet, that's exactly what I've done. I've taken a community in an organization where I kind of met Gareth about 4 or 5 years ago, and that's exactly what we did. In a couple of days, I facilitated a process of discovery for them. I used a specific formula for how to discover better ways of structuring the work, and I didn't force them into it. They really took to it. They thought, oh, wow, this would be amazing. Let's try this. And Wednesday, they went back to work. They tried it out, and on Friday, they went, man, you know what? Our lead time now is less than 30 minutes. It's unbelievable. But if I would have told them up front, here's what's going to happen, they would have said, get out of here, man.
You didn't tell them. Yeah.
I didn't. I didn't.
So, because I was going to challenge you on this. There's a really good story that I like, and that was native. I don't like the word Native Indians, but I'm not Americans. I can't.
Americans, Native Americans, yes.
Native Americans, is that what it's called? Yeah, cool, thank you. Native Americans apparently knew the ships from Europe were coming because the waves looked different, but they could see the ships, but they couldn't. Their brains hadn't clicked. I tend to find very similar things with transformations. If I tell a team where you're going to be 3 months from now, 1 week from now, 1 year from now, they will purposely not believe me.
Yep.
And then B, they'll blockade the
Yep.
progress
Yep.
because it would
It's
undo.
scary. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a fear perception, right? So their amygdala's like booming and saying, "Oh no, this can't be right." So I agree with you when you say you didn't tell them. Like
Nope.
that I
No,
agree
I did
with.
not.
Yeah.
I did not focus on small rungs, small changes. Because
Yeah.
small rung, I can reach it, and all of a sudden, whoa! But that's why I was saying Kaizen and Kaikaku are two sides of the same coin.
Yeah.
Right? Because that big step change, I didn't tell them, guys, we're going to make a massive change. They actually pulled the change. It wasn't pushed on them. They welcomed the idea. Let's try this out. They embraced the experiment, and it worked massively for them. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, and I love it when they reflect back and they go, I can't believe that. And what's even better is when you get them to think that, what's that saying by Sun Tzu? If it's their idea,
that's right. That's Lao Tzu. That's Lao Tzu. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. You're right. That's magical.
Yeah.
So adaptive oversight. This seems really interesting. You're going to publish a journal, write a book?
No, it's going to be a book
set
and
up
a whole
YouTube?
series of offerings. You're going to see on LeanPub chapters appearing in the next few weeks. So throughout the rest of the year, we hope to engage with a broader community and get as much feedback as we can. We believe very much in co-creating this rather than saying, we mwahaha are the clever guys that will tell you how it's done. No, let's discover it together.
It's way more fun. I've got my business agility course at the moment going through beta testing, and it's hard, guys. I'm not going to say it's not hard. It's hard to get this massive critique and be told that that's crap. You're like, I spent hours researching that, but you need it. You need it for A, customer value, and B, for a coherent message. So I respect you for that. Can we get you on a journey, guys? Can we get you, say, 3 months from now and talk about the journey you've been on, what you've learned around this, what you've changed on, and almost we could turn it into like a reflection.
Sure.
I think that'd be really cool, guys. If we can get you back 3 months' time and in 3 months' time and see how your journey unfolds. Because one of the things that we believe here at Agility Matters is that we are going to basically look at case studies over time. Like, you should be truly transparent about things. And if you fail, guys, let us know. Because I think it'd be fun to learn from your failures.
See, the thing is, language is really poor. The Inuit have over 40 different words for snow.
Yeah.
This is different kinds of snow. And for instance, personally, I don't really care for the word failure because I never wake up in the morning going, I'm going to fail today. Right? But what I do,
really?
I wake up in the morning and go, I'm going to learn today. So if I'm focusing on the learning rather than the failure, it's a completely different thing.
I like that.
Because whatever doesn't kill you teaches you, right? I don't care how many times you kind of smack me down and I'm down on the floor of the ring, right? Kind of like, oh my God, just barely waking up. As long as I stand back up and keep going, that's what matters. It's kind of, we were mentioning earlier, Angela Duckworth's grit, right? Brené Brown has Rising Strong, same kind of thing, yeah? So
Nelson Mandela, I'm quoting him here. He said, I never fail. I win or I learn.
That's right.
Ooh,
that's
I haven't
right.
heard that one. That one's good.
Or I never lose. I win or I learn. Something like that. But
yeah.
Churchill said the same thing halfway through the Second World War, saying we're failing a lot, but we're also learning from that failure.
Yeah.
That's
well,
right.
We as British, I'll take the British title for the moment. We were lucky during that time frame. There was a big bit of water separating. Let's not get into that. Angela Duckworth, definitely worth reading as well, guys. It's Grit's the book. Very holistic message on whether or not one of the EQ skills you can look at. We've been through, just a quick overview of what we've been through. We've been through the governance, the adaptive oversight, Kaizen coach versus not. What is a coach? One model you guys can use. We've put it in, I don't know if you guys noticed, but I actually found the image that you guys are drawing. So I put it on there for you guys. We've been through DA, a lot in an hour actually, when I think about it. And is there anything else you guys want to bring up and say about? How do we find you? Where do we find you guys?
Novavi.co. Easy.
Nice. Nice.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I think the last question that I'm going to raise is if adaptive oversight is going to be, I guess, a key focus in the future. Are you going to get involved with finance and HR as well as legalities? Like, because I get told a lot as an ex-accountant, I find it quite frustrating because I love the agility movement because like it lowers my risk, increases my IIRs. It's beautiful. But there's a real thing out there that the finance guys and the HR people are actually the ones blockading our transformations, right?
Yeah.
Are you going to touch on them specifically?
It has to. Absolutely. Because for instance, this madness of cost-based accounting has got to stop.
Yeah.
We really need to embrace throughput accounting. We really need to understand what theory of constraints has to do for us, what tame flow is all about. We really need to pay attention to why that makes a hell of a lot of sense. So if you want the background to why that is and how, there's all sorts of communities out there that are already ready for this. So I have yet to find a cost-based accountant that can sustain an argument with me on why that's better than throughput accounting. It simply doesn't stack up.
And in addition to the gold work on that, we are looking at value stream consulting. And of course, at the value stream, you have to consider everything that touches the work. And that includes the funding model. And that includes the HR.
Yeah, I totally agree with you guys. And I've talked to a lot of CFOs over my time, especially as I moved into the coaching and transformation space. And they look at me like I'm Barney. Like, how can you be an ex-accountant and be recommending this stuff? I'm like, if I show you your return on assets is higher, will you believe me? And they're like, go on then, show me your return on assets. And then you show it to them, they're like, am I riskless? Here, have as much money as you want. You know, it's beautiful when they realize, they click and they go, it's not all about just this wishy-washy, agile mumbo jumbo.
No.
It's about literally drawing down for the highest amount of value that you can do and then improving on that over time. I mean, you guys, I think most of you know, I'm a big fan of 90-day strategy. I know. Some people are like, 90-day strategy, that's terrible. What about, daily strategy? It's like, yeah, great. But I love 90-day strategy as an accountant. We still work in fiscal years. And the fact is that you can show an accountant, I will draw down a certain amount and give you the value realized at the end of the quarter.
Yeah.
That's the key. You must realize the value. If you don't realize the value, they're going to say no. But
again,
if you realize that.
So that's the innovation accounting you're talking about.
There's a lot of great stuff in the Beyond Budgeting community as well. So go visit with the Beyond Budgeting Roundtable. They have a lot of fantastic work in this space. Think about relative assessment rather than sort of the ridiculousness of stretch targets, right? Pushing for the impossible only erodes your credibility and demoralizes everybody, right? Yeah. So learn what is humanly possible, understand burden, right? And overburden, the muri, the kind of lean elements. A lot of people are still clueless about them. Unfortunately, we still have a lot of people in positions of authority that have simply just bullshitted their way to a position of prominence and don't really understand what it actually takes to get stuff done. And that's a fundamental challenge. And that's part of our crusade, if you will, where we're writing this book out of passion and fury.
I'm looking forward to reading it. And you touched on a little thing there. We can't go into it because of time now. But I think, personally, I'll leave you a little thought process that it's our industry that's caused this. They focus so wholeheartedly on Muda that they forgot about everything else.
Exactly.
Like you can pick up a book and you read this book on lean. I mean, the best one, sorry, I don't want to get into this too much, but the best one is Eric Reed's, right? MVP, minimal viable product. He didn't say minimal viable deliverable. He said, test an assumption. Get a piece of paper and just test it. Anyway.
Not enough.
Yeah. Anyone online have any questions? Because you guys, there's 19 of you and you've been very quiet. I'll give you a few seconds to think about that, question-wise, or we'll wrap up. Great session, guys. I've really enjoyed this. And I'm looking forward to your book.
Same here. Thanks for having us.
No worries. Okay. Well, there's no question. There's dropping off now slowly, but there's still 8 people there. But no questions, guys. Okay. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Awesome. Well, that was an engaging session, was it? Some quick reflections that I've got from this session that I've really enjoyed is, how you can have differing views on what looks like polar sides, right? But you can come to the conclusion together on what makes sense for an organization. As in, like, I'm an artist, I'm a coach, but the outcomes are the same. We're focusing on the same solution, the customer. The customer is where it's at. Customer values what we should be monitoring and measuring and going towards. You'll see again another 3 very well experienced professionals talking about what our industry tends to do to itself. So I recommend you reflect on that and start to think, what am I doing to improve our industry, or what am I taking away from it? Thank you very much. This is Agility Matters. I'm Mike, and I'll see you next week. Goodbye.